In the last section, we were able to override our default start command to run our tests. We've got Docker run. We attach a standard in and sudo terminal to that container that gets created. We've got the ID and then the override command. When we run that, we get the output that we usually see when we run a test suite. I can then hit enter to refresh the tests, and yeah, it looks like everything is looking okay here. However, you're going to very quickly see that we're going to run into the exact same issue that we've been trying to solve in the last couple of sections as well. If you open up your code editor, I want you to find the src directory, and then inside there, look for the app.test.js file. Inside of here, you'll see an it statement. So this is the actual test that is currently being executed inside of our test suite. I want to try making a modification to this file. So I'm going to highlight this it statement right here, the entire thing. I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to paste it down right underneath it, and finally I will save the file. If we then go back over to our terminal, you'll notice that the test suite did not rerun, and it still thinks that there's only one test. You can try hitting enter to rerun the test suite, and it sticks at one test. So I bet you can kind of guess what's going on here. We've got a container that's been created specifically to run some tests. When we created that container, we essentially took a snapshot of all of our working files and folders and put that inside the container. So this very temporary container that we've made just to run our tests does not have all that volume stuff set up. That is the issue. And so without any of those volumes set up, we are using old and outdated files inside of our container. And any changes we make to our test suite will not be reflected inside there. So in this section, we're going to take a look at one or two different ways that we can possibly solve this. Now, we certainly could use a very similar approach of setting up some volumes in the same way that we just did inside of our Docker Compose file a moment ago. So we could set up a second service inside of here. We could assign some volumes to it, and the entire purpose of that service would be to run our test suite. Now that's definitely a way that we're going to go. We're definitely going to give that a shot, but I first want to show you a slightly different approach, one in which we will not create a second service inside the Docker Compose file. So let me show you this second approach first. All right, I'm going to stop the running test suite by hitting Control-C, and then I'm going to bring up our Docker Compose instance with Docker Compose up. All right, so that has created, well, in just a second here, there we go. So that creates our single container that is running our application. Now, one possible way that we can solve this issue with our test suite is, rather than making a second service inside the Docker Compose file, we could instead attach to the existing container that is created. When we attach to it, we can then execute a command to start up our test suite inside there, and that will give us access to a container that already has all this volume mapping set up. So let me show you how to do that. I've got my Docker Compose container running right here. I'm going to open up a second terminal window, and then inside of here, I'm going to get the ID of our running container with Docker PS. So here's the ID of our running container. So we can attempt to execute a new command inside this container with docker exec-it. I'll put that ID down, and then the command that we're going to execute will be npm run test. So essentially what we're going to do here is reuse the existing container we have. We're going to start up our test suite inside there. So I'll run that, and lo and behold, our test suite appears. It looks like it now correctly recognizes that we have two tests. And if I go back over to my code editor and find that app.test.js file again, I can delete that second it statement. So I'll highlight the second one right here, I'll delete it, and I'll save the file. Then when I go back over to my terminal, you'll notice that it automatically updated, and it's back to thinking that we've only got one test inside there. Perfect. So this is definitely a solution that works. However, this is not necessarily the best solution, because if you are developing this application, it's going to require you to start up Docker Compose, then get the ID of that running container and run that docker exec command, which is kind of hard to remember off the top of your head. So this is definitely a solution, but I don't necessarily think it's as good as it possibly could be. Now let's take a quick pause right here. We're going to come back to the next section, and we're going to try a slightly different approach where we will add a second service to our Docker Compose file. The second service will be responsible solely for running our test suite. So quick break, and I'll see you in just a minute.